So my son and I were talking the other day about depopulation, basically, and we were talking about overdoses and how, there is an opioid epidemic and that it's fentanyl that is killing people, okay? And people want to argue that it's the average man that's perpetrating all this, that's doing all this, and that's not the case. Fentanyl's a synthetic opioid. It's not made in the back of a van. It's made in a lab, okay? So somebody's funding this. It's coming from the top down. That's how it gets on the streets. There is a show called Snowfall that's on USA, I think. But it's been out several years. It's quite a good show, and I've watched it. And it's about how the crack cocaine epidemic got started, and it's the CIA. It was the CIA. They did. They funded weapons. They were providing weapons to both sides of a war. The same thing that like Oliver North was involved in or something, I think, like that Iran-Contra thing or whatever. But the U.S. was basically providing, I think, weapons to both sides. At least one side, maybe. I don't quote me on that. But either way, they funded this operation with this crack cocaine. And I guarantee that, okay, Afghanistan is... There was a reason that the U.S. went into Afghanistan for all those years. That was to guard poppy fields. The Afghanistan poppies are where 90% of the world's opiates come from. I personally know 3 people that did tours of duty, and their sole mission was to guard those poppy fields. Pretty sure the Ukraine has a lot of labs that make things like fentanyl. But anyways, it's not the average man that is doing this. And the fact of the matter is that people have always used drugs. They will always use drugs. Prohibition and wars on drugs make drug problems worse. Historically, that's always the case. In countries where drugs are legal, sold over the counter, you can go buy heroin, they don't have the kinds of drug problems that we do. There's something about the human species that when you tell us not to do something, we do it. And then, especially as a teenager and stuff, and when kids start messing with this stuff, and then trauma, that's 95% of the reason people use drugs. Drug addiction is not a moral failing. It has nothing to do with somebody being a bad person. In fact, in my observation is most drug addicts are incredibly good people and highly intelligent people that cannot deal with this hell-like society that we are forced to live in. This slave rat race, chase money till you die. That's not life. It's not living. My ex-husband said something to me once, like, well, I mean, you act like you're grateful you were a drug addict. It's like, well, to be perfectly honest, I am grateful for the experience, because if I hadn't have had it, I could have shown the same lack of empathy that you do. Drug addiction doesn't discriminate. It hits all socioeconomic classes. Hell, I mean, I've not done drugs that many years of my life, but you take being married to a narcissistic man who's emotionally abusive, financially abusive, all the abusive except physically, which I think that might have been easier. But anyways, you're married to an abusive man, you've got chronic pain, you're being forced to work 40 hours a week, you're begging to quit, all this stuff, you're in so much pain, and a friend offers you a pill. You take that shit and it helps and just starts a whole ball rolling, and before you know it, you're a junkie. It happens. And if it could happen to me, it could happen to absolutely anybody, I'm going to tell you that. I never appreciated the lack of faith that people had in me, though. Like, well, she's a goner. I mean, I knew that I had the possibility of getting better, but it's like no one else did. No one else was willing to show any support. And I know that, like, this life is about loving the self and discovering the self and standing in the self, but it really sucks to have everyone act like you have no value. It's crazy. Everyone but my kids, you know. There were more overdoses last year than ever before. 100,000 or something. And that's only the ones that killed people. You know, Narcan probably saved 4 times that many. If you're struggling, there is hope. There are ways to get out. There are ways other than Narcotics Anonymous as well. Medically assisted treatment has been shown to help way more statistically. And is it ideal to be dependent on big pharma, especially since that, if it's opiates, might have been exactly what got you addicted? No. No, it's not. But you deserve the best chance. And anybody saying to somebody that if that's on stable medically assisted treatment that they're not in recovery or they're not clean, you are ignorant, you are a fool, and your words may kill that person. You don't know where someone is mentally. I am friends with a woman on TikTok who her family, this girl had been on Suboxone for 6 months. She was doing great. She was getting her life back. She was getting a job, you know, and all that. And her family said, well, you have to either choose the Suboxone or me, because, or, you know, or like your housing, your whole livelihood. I guess they were helping support her because, you know, Suboxone isn't recovery and that's supposed to be short term. And the girl died. Yeah. It is short term, okay? But short term is a minimum of 24 months when we're talking about addiction recovery. You did not develop drug addiction overnight, nor did you just suffer overnight. You do not recover overnight. It is a process. Recovery is so much more than putting down the substances, okay? And there are people that have chronic pain or that chronically relapse, and medically assisted treatment keeps them alive. It's no different than taking a blood pressure medication if you take it properly. It does not get you high, it does not do anything. As a matter of fact, what time is it? It's about 9 a.m., which my dose peaks 4 hours after I took it, which I took it at 5 when I got up. So here I am, as high as I'll get all day. People are so ignorant. I'm not freaking high. The worst thing that'll happen to you is when your dose peaks, you'll get a little sleepy for a half an hour. Kind of like if you took a Benadryl. People need to mind their business. You know, it's not a coincidence that words and sword are an anagram. And a lot of times your words can do far more damage. Keep quiet if you don't know what you're talking about. Have a good day.